I was 23 years old when the cracks in my family finally showed. Cracks I didn't even know existed. Looking back, there were signs everywhere. Strange comments, whispered conversations, sudden silences whenever I entered a room. But when you grow up in something, you don't question it. You call it normal. It all started with a text from my mother. Family dinner Sunday, mandatory. Mandatory, like it was a meeting for employees, not a gathering for loved ones. My mom rarely organized family dinners, maybe on holidays, maybe when my sister wanted to show off a new achievement. But a random Sunday night? That was new, and the timing was strange too. My parents had been acting different, cold, careful, observing me like I was some experiment about to fail. Still, I told myself I was overthinking. I always did. When Sunday came, I drove home expecting the usual evening of polite small talk and underlying tension. But when I walked through the door, I felt it. Something was off. My parents were dressed too neatly. The dining table was set like they were expecting royalty, not their average disappointing son. My sister Emma was already there, twirling her hair, smiling like she knew something I didn't. She never smiled at me, not genuinely. Dad stood up when I walked in. "You're on time," he said. It wasn't praise, it was surprise. Mom followed with, "Let's sit, we have things to discuss." "Discuss?" I repeated. "I thought this was dinner." Mom exchanged a glance with Dad, one of those silent conversations parents have when they're about to scold a child. Except I wasn't a child anymore. We sat, food untouched. No one lifted a fork. Then my dad folded his hands and said, "We think it's time you know the truth." My heart stuttered. My first instinct, that I'd done something wrong, that somehow I disappointed them again. But his tone wasn't angry. He was cautious. Nervous even. My mom took a shaky breath. "Before we tell you anything, we need you to understand that we did what we thought was best." Best for who? I didn't ask yet, I just listened. Dad continued, "For 23 years, we raised you the best we could. We provided, we supported, we protected." Protected. That word felt sharp. Then Mom reached into a drawer and placed an envelope on the table. Thick, old, yellowed. My name written on the front, except not my name. Not the name I'd gone by my whole life. It looked like another name. Similar handwriting to my grandmother's. My stomach tightened. "What is this?" I whispered. Dad pushed it toward me. "Open it." My hands felt heavy as I slid the papers out. At first, it looked like random documents, but then I saw it. A hospital logo, a birth certificate, a date, and then the line that punched every bit of air out of my lungs. Mother, unknown. Father, unknown. Birth name, Liam Carter. Not my name. Not my parents' last name. Not my identity. I looked up, confusion burning behind my eyes. What is this supposed to mean? Mom's voice cracked. "You're not biologically ours." For a full 10 seconds, no one breathed. My mind rejected the words. They didn't fit. They didn't make sense. They didn't belong in my reality. I laughed, a shaky, broken sound. "You're kidding, right? This is some kind of sick joke?" Dad shook his head. "We adopted you when you were an infant." My pulse thundered, my vision blurred. Adopted? My entire life? Rewritten in a single sentence. Emma stared at me with a smug calmness that made me want to flip the table. She knew. She had always known. The way she looked at me growing up suddenly made sense. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, voice barely hauled. Mom covered her mouth. "Because we promised to wait until the right moment." Dad added, "Your biological family, there were complications." Complications. Another vague word carefully chosen to avoid telling me anything real. I felt heat rising in my chest, fear, anger, heartbreak blending into something unbearable. So everything, my whole life, all of it was a lie? Mom reached out, but I pulled back. I didn't want comfort from strangers. Dad sighed heavily. "There's more." More? How much more could there be? "Tonight," he said, "we're having someone join us." "Who?" I asked. Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Your real family." The room spun, my heartbeat roared in my ears. I felt a pressure in my chest like the walls were closing in. And then the doorbell rang.
The doorbell didn't just echo through the house. It echoed through my body. My parents froze. My sister straightened her posture like she'd been rehearsing for this moment. And me, I felt a cold rush of panic pulse up my spine. My dad stood first. He's here. He, not they, not someone, he, a specific person, a man, the man who apparently belonged to the identity I never knew I had. My mom wipes her eyes quickly, trying to look composed before Dad opens the door. Emma crosses her arms, watching me like a time bomb she's been waiting years to see go off. The front door creaked open. I couldn't see him yet, just the outline of someone tall. Broad shoulders, slow steps, but I heard his voice, a deep, steady voice that felt strangely familiar. "Thank you for inviting me." My dad stepped aside and the man entered. He looked to be in his late 40s, but his eyes were what stopped me. They were the same shade as mine, not similar, the exact same color, a very specific, uncommon gray. My stomach dropped so hard I had to grip the back of a chair just to keep myself steady. He looked at me the way someone looks at a ghost, shocked, aching, disbelieving. "Liam?" he whispered. That name, the name I didn't recognize, felt heavier coming from him, realer. I didn't answer. I couldn't. He took a cautious step toward me. I can't believe it. You look exactly like... Dad cleared his throat sharply, cutting him off. "Let's sit. We should talk." Mom motioned toward the table with trembling hands. The man nodded and sat at the opposite end from me, like my parents were trying to keep a safe distance between us. My chest tightened. This was real. Too real. He looked at me again, studying every detail like he had been memorizing a missing piece of his life for decades. "I'm Daniel," he said gently. I snapped. "Don't say it." Everyone flinched. I wasn't trying to be rude. I just wasn't ready to hear whatever he thought he was to me. My voice cracked when I added, "I don't even know what's true anymore." Mom inhaled sharply, guilt spreading across her face. "Sweetheart, no," I said firmly, keeping my eyes on the stranger. "Daniel, someone tell me what's going on. All of it. Now." Dad let out a long breath, like he'd been dreading this moment for years. "You were adopted privately, through unusual circumstances." Unusual? I almost laughed again. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Unusual isn't the right word." Mom whispered, "Daniel, please." "No," he said. "He deserves the truth." The room stilled. Daniel leaned forward, resting his hands on the table. "You were taken from my family." My blood ran cold. "Taken?" I repeated. "What does that supposed to mean?" Daniel's eyes flicked toward my parents, accusing, sharp, burning. My parents looked like they were about to be sick. Emma stared at her plate, suddenly pale. Dad swallowed hard. "This is not the way we agreed." "Because the way you agreed was to keep lying." My heartbeat felt like it was hammering against every bone in my body. "Someone explain," I demanded. My mom finally broke. "You came to us when you were 3 months old. We were told your birth family couldn't keep you, that you needed a home. We didn't know anything else." "That's a lie," Daniel said quietly. "And they know it." Mom's face crumpled. Dad looked away. Emma shrank into her chair like she wanted to disappear. Daniel continued, voice trembling with old pain. "My sister, your biological mother, was told you died." Silence. Actual suffocating silence filled the room. My throat closed. "What?" Daniel nodded slowly. "She was manipulated by someone who wanted you out of the picture, someone who forged paperwork and claimed the adoption was legal." My hands were going numb. I could barely breathe. Why? Why would anyone do that? Daniel looked at me with heartbreak carved into every line on his face. "Because of money, because of control, because my family was fighting over an inheritance, and you," he swallowed hard, "were born into the middle of it all." Inheritance. That word sliced through everything. My parents' discomfort suddenly made sense. The secrecy, the fear in their eyes, the way they looked at Daniel like he was a threat. "What does any of this have to do with me?" I whispered. Daniel hesitated. Then he said words that changed the temperature of the room instantly. "Because you're the legal heir to my father's estate." My pulse stopped. "And your grandparents," he added quietly, "never stopped looking for you." The ground under me felt like it tilted. My parents looked like the truth had finally cornered them. And for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't know who I was or who I could trust.
I don't know how long I sat there staring at Daniel. Maybe seconds, maybe minutes. Time wasn't moving normally anymore. "And heir?" I finally said, the word barely leaving my mouth. Daniel nodded. "My father, your grandfather, passed away last year. His estate was supposed to be divided among the family, but a large portion was legally reserved for you." Me. Someone who didn't even know he existed until 20 minutes earlier. My dad rubbed his temples like he was in physical pain. Mom kept glancing between me and Daniel,
her breathing shaky. Emma looked like she wanted to crawl under the table and never come out. I leaned back, trying to process. Why would your father leave anything to me? He didn't even know me. Daniel shook his head. He never believed you were dead. Not for a single day. A heavy sadness pulled at his voice. He spent years searching, hired investigators, contacted agencies. He refused to accept the lie. I didn't know what to say. Do you thank someone you've never met for fighting for you? For loving you without knowing you? I didn't even know what that kind of love felt like. So I swallowed hard. Why didn't anyone find me? Daniel's jaw tightened because someone kept blocking every attempt. My eyes drifted to my parents. Slowly, unwillingly, my dad stood up abruptly. Enough. You come into our home, drudge up old wounds, and accuse us of— I'm not accusing. I'm stating facts. Daniel cut in. Calm, but deadly sharp. Mom closed her eyes, like she already knew what was coming. Daniel reached into his jacket and placed a manila folder on the table. My heartbeat spiked. This, he said, sliding it toward me, is the investigation file. The one we never stopped updating. I opened it. The first page was a photo of a 3-month-old baby. Me. Same eyes, same expression. I felt something twist hard inside my chest. Then I saw the next page. Official letters, records, reports, all stamped with one phrase. Request blocked. Private adoption sealed. Daniel pointed to one document. This stamp, it only appears when someone with custody files a non-disclosure override. In simple terms, someone prevented access to your records. My dad's voice rose. We were told it was a closed adoption. We just followed the rules. Daniel didn't blink. Then explain this. He pulled out another paper. This time, my dad's signature sat at the bottom. Not a copy, an original. A hush fell over the room. My dad's face drained completely. Mom covered her mouth with both hands. Dad, Emma whispered. What is that? My father didn't answer. Daniel dead. This is the document that sealed the file. The one that prevented every legal attempt to locate him. My chest tightened until breathing felt like swallowing glass. You sealed my identity? Dad slammed his fist on the table. We were trying to protect you. From who? My actual family? He didn't respond. Daniel exhaled shakily. My sister, your biological mother, was 19 when you were born. She was overwhelmed, yes, but she never wanted to give you up. Someone manipulated her, told her she wasn't fit, pressured her, and when she fought back, his voice cracked. They told her you died in the hospital. A cold, hollow ache spread through me. I didn't know if I was angry, heartbroken, or both. And now, I asked, barely audible. Daniel's eyes softened. Now, she knows you're alive. I told her I found you. Mom gasped. You said we needed time. I gave you 23 years of time. No one spoke after that. I stared at my parents, the people who raised me, who were supposed to love me, protect me, and suddenly, I didn't recognize them at all. You lied to me my whole life, I said quietly. Mom shook her head violently. We loved you. We did everything for you. Love isn't the problem. It's the choices you made to keep me. My dad stepped forward. We were your real parents, not them. That sentence snapped something inside me. I stood, palms pressing hard on the table. You don't get to decide that. You don't get to erase where I came from just because it was inconvenient. My dad stiffened. Mom cried silently. Emma whispered, what happens now? Daniel looked directly at me. My family wants to meet you. There's so much they want to tell you, and something important they need to show you. What is it? I asked. Daniel hesitated. Then he said, proof. Proof of what? He held my gaze. Then he said, proof of who orchestrated your disappearance. The room went dead silent. My parents looked terrified, and I realized the truth wasn't just complicated, it was dangerous.
The word proof echoed in my head long after Daniel said it. Proof of who took me, of who made me vanish. The air felt thick, like the room itself was holding its breath. My mom stared at Daniel in disbelief, shaking her head like she could erase everything if she just denied it hard enough. My dad's jaw was tight, sweat gathering at his temples. Emma looked frozen, caught between shock and fear. I swallowed hard. Proof of who orchestrated my disappearance?
I repeated. What does that even mean? Daniel didn't answer immediately. He pulled another envelope from his jacket and placed it on the table. Thicker, heavier, like it held the weight of the last 23 years. This, he said quietly, was given to us by my grandfather's lawyer after he died. He left specific instructions. If we ever found you, if you were alive, we were to open it and deliver everything inside. My pulse hammered in my ears. Why didn't you show this first? I asked. Daniel exhaled. Because once you see it, you can't go back. Something in his voice made my skin crawl. My parents both tensed visibly. Don't do this, Dad finally said, his voice low, strained. You're causing unnecessary pain. Daniel shot him a cold look. No, you caused unnecessary pain. I'm just uncovering it. I reached for the envelope. My hands shook, not from fear of what was inside, but from fear of what it would confirm. Inside were 3 things. 1, a photocopy of a handwritten letter. 2, a hospital form. 3, a grainy photograph. I unfolded the letter first. The handwriting was shaky, but strong enough to read. If you are reading this, then my granddaughter's child is alive. Do not trust the official story. Do not trust the hospital. And do not, under any circumstances, trust the man who took him. My breath caught. I read the next line. His name is Michael. I shot up. That's you, Daniel said. The man our grandfather warned us about. My dad's face turned red. Bright, furious red. Mom grabbed the edge of the table like she needed it to stay upright. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Daniel lifted the hospital document next. A newborn discharge form. Mother, Laura Bennett. Father, not listed. Infant transferred to Neonatal Unit C, but under transfer authorized by, written in bold black ink, Michael Carter. My father's signature. I stared at it like it was a ghost. That can't be real, Mom whispered through trembling lips. Dad barked. It's forged or taken out of context. I don't even remember. But Daniel interrupted him. There's more. He held up the photograph. It was old, blurry, washed out, but clear enough to see my mother, my biological mother, sobbing into the arms of a nurse. And standing behind her, near the hallway, in the corner of the frame, was my father, holding a clipboard, signing something. Mom let out a broken sound. Emma pressed her hand over her mouth. I stared at the image, the truth sinking like ice into my spine. Dad, I said, my voice barely holding. What were you signing? He didn't answer. Daniel stepped closer. You didn't adopt him, he said. Someone paid you, or threatened you, or convinced you. But you weren't chosen randomly. You were involved. Mom stood suddenly, pointing at Daniel. You're twisting things. We gave him a good life. We fed him. We raised him. But that isn't the point. Daniel snapped back. You stole a child. You let a family grieve. You let a mother think her baby was dead for 23 years. Mom crumpled back into her seat, sobbing. Dad slammed his fist on the table. We saved him. His mother was unstable, irresponsible. She was 19 and terrified. She didn't need judgment. She needed support. You took advantage of her vulnerability. My dad's face twisted. We did what we had to do. You did what was easiest for you. He went still. I didn't realize I'd stood up, but my legs were moving on their own. My body felt electric, alive with something between fury and heartbreak. I said, what else? You held me. You raised me. You taught me to trust you. And the whole time, you knew. Dad looked away. You knew I wasn't yours. Silence. You knew someone else was out there searching for me. Silence heavier. You knew the truth, and you let them mourn. Dad's voice finally came out, low and defeated. I did what I thought was right. No. You did what benefited you. He flinched. Daniel placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, not controlling, not pushing, just grounding me. There's one more thing, he said. The biggest piece of all. He pulled out a small USB drive. My grandfather left recordings, conversations he secretly captured, names, motives, the person who orchestrated everything. I stared at it like it was a detonator. Who? I whispered. Daniel looked toward my parents. Both of them looked terrified. He took a slow breath. The mastermind wasn't the hospital. It wasn't an agency. It wasn't your father. He paused. It was someone even closer. Emma's eyes widened. Mom shook her head violently. Dad whispered, don't. Daniel's voice dropped to a single, chilling sentence. Michael, the one who arranged your disappearance, was your grandmother. The room collapsed into silence, and nothing, absolutely nothing, felt real anymore.
For a moment, I genuinely thought I misheard him. My
grandmother? I repeated, the word tasting wrong in my mouth. Daniel nodded slowly. The room went still, heavy, suffocating, like all the air had been sucked out of it. Mom looked horrified. Dad looked defeated. Emma looked like her whole reality had snapped in half. I sat down, because my legs refused to hold me. My grandmother, I said again, barely whispering. Why would she do something like that? Daniel laid the USB drive on the table between us. It's all on here. Calls, voicemails, arguments. The lawyer has more copies archived. Your grandfather recorded everything before he died because he knew what she did would be buried otherwise. My dad held his head in his hands. This is going too far. No, this is the truth, Daniel said. Mom wiped her eyes. I didn't know, she whispered, voice trembling. I swear I didn't know. She never told me anything. Dad didn't defend her. Dad didn't defend anyone. That alone told me more than the evidence did. Play it, I said quietly. I want to hear. He hesitated. Are you sure? This isn't easy. Nothing about this is easy, I said. Play it. He connected the USB to his phone with an adapter. A few taps, a long, terrible pause. Then a shaky recording crackled to life. My grandfather's voice, older, tired, filled the room. Evelyn, you can't keep pretending nothing happened. My stomach clenched so hard it hurt. My grandmother's voice followed, sharp, cold, familiar in the worst way. We saved that child from a disastrous life. Laura would have ruined him. I felt my chest tighten. Daniel flinched. Mom covered her mouth. Grandfather, you lied to her. You told her the baby died. Grandmother, unapologetic, because the truth would have been worse. A dead baby is easier to mourn than a stolen one. My blood ran cold. Grandfather's voice cracked. You forged the papers. She didn't deny it. The adoption was necessary. That boy would have grown up in chaos. Chaos. She meant my biological mother. She meant Daniel's sister, my family. Grandfather's voice rose. Angry, desperate. You took a child who wasn't ours. Then came the words that changed everything. Michael and Sarah couldn't have children. I gave them one. My breath left my lungs. I felt like the floor dropped out beneath me. Daniel's eyes widened in shock too. He hadn't heard this part. Grandmother continued. Calm and devastating. I gave him a purpose. I gave them a purpose. And I won't apologize for doing what needed to be done. The clip ended. Silence crashed down over the room like stone. Mom sobbed quietly into her hands. Emma stared at nothing. Dad looked destroyed, like his last defense had been ripped away. I couldn't breathe. My grandmother, the woman who babysat me, fed me, held my hand in crowds, taught me to tie my shoes, tucked me in when my parents were working late. She was the one who stole me from my real family. She wasn't cruel in obvious ways. Her cruelty was calculated, purposeful, wrapped in sugar and smiles. How could she do that? I whispered, voice cracking. Daniel swallowed hard. He believed she was doing you a favor, that you'd be better off with your adopted parents than with my sister. But she destroyed my family. Both of them. No one argued. No one could. My dad finally whispered, we didn't know she forged the documents. We were told you were unwanted. Daniel cut him off sharply. She manipulated you too. But ignorance doesn't erase what happened. Dad slumped back in his chair like the guilt weighed 1,000 pounds. Mom reached out for me. I pulled my hand away. I wasn't ready. Not yet. What happened to her? I finally asked. He hesitated. His gaze softened. She passed away 3 years ago. The room shrank. Gone. She was gone. No confrontation, no explanation, no apology. Just an empty chair in the past. I exhaled a shaky breath. I didn't even know what I was feeling anymore. Anger, grief, betrayal, relief, all tangled into something too heavy to carry. There's something else I need to tell you, Daniel said gently. I looked up. My sister, your biological mom, wants to meet you. He paused. She wants to see you in person, not out of obligation, not out of pressure. She wants to because she never stopped loving you. Something inside me cracked so hard I thought I'd break open. My voice barely held together. What if I'm not what she expects? He smiled. Soft, sad, sincere. It doesn't matter. You're her son. That's all she's ever wanted. I closed my eyes, inhaled, exhaled. When I opened them, the decision was already made. Okay, I whispered. I'll meet her. Mom gasped. Michael, please. Dad stood up suddenly. Think carefully before you do this. I turned to them. No. I said. For the first time in my life, I'm finally thinking clearly. I grabbed my jacket, looked at Daniel. Take me to her. He nodded. And as we stepped out the door, I realized everything I thought I knew about my life had already been burned to ash. All that was left now was the truth waiting for me on the other side.
The drive to meet her didn't feel real. Streetlights blurred past the windows, glowing in long streaks like the world was crying light. My heart hammered so loudly I could hear it in my ears. Daniel sat beside me, calm but watchful, giving me space while also grounding me in a way I desperately needed. When we pulled up, I expected a crowd, a dramatic reveal, something big, but instead, we stopped in front of a small, quiet house with a porch light glowing warmly. "She's inside," Daniel said softly. "She's been waiting." I stepped out of the car, my legs barely cooperating. My palms were sweaty, my throat felt tight. I wasn't scared, but I wasn't ready either. How could anyone be ready for something like this? As we approached the door, it opened, and there she was, my mother, older than in the photograph, softer around the edges, eyes tired from years of grief, but still bright, still searching, the same eyes I saw in the mirror every morning. For a moment, she didn't move. She just stared at me, like she was afraid if she blinked, I'd disappear again. Then her hand lifted, shaking. Michael, hearing my name in her voice, her real voice, shattered something inside me. "I'm here," I whispered, and she broke. Tears spilled instantly as she rushed forward and wrapped her arms around me. Not tentative, not polite, but desperate, fierce, like she had been holding that embrace in her chest for 23 years and couldn't keep it in another second. I froze, overwhelmed. Then I hugged her back, and something in me clicked into place. A piece of myself I didn't know was missing suddenly felt found. She pulled away just enough to look at my face, holding my cheeks like she needed to memorize me. "You're alive. You're really here," she whispered. I nodded, unable to speak through the tightness in my throat. We sat inside her small living room. The couch was old, worn at the edges. There were photos everywhere. Daniel, their parents, nieces, nephews, but one frame on the shelf stood out, a baby's ultrasound. Another of a newborn with no name, a blank picture frame beside it, an empty space reserved for me. My chest ached. She handed me a cup of tea, hands still trembling. "I don't know what they told you, but I want you to hear it from me," she began quietly. I nodded. She took a breath that clearly hurt to take. "When I had you, I was young. Alone, scared, but I loved you more than anything." Her voice cracked. "They told me you died. They let me hold you once, and then they took you away and said you didn't make it." She pressed a shaking hand to her mouth. "I never believed them. Not fully. Something inside me kept saying you were still alive." I felt my eyes sting. Daniel stepped in gently. "She spent years searching. She even tried reopening the case 2 times. But someone high up blocked everything." "Your grandmother," I whispered. My mother closed her eyes. "Yes, she explained everything. Her arguments with hospital staff, the lies she was fed, the way they refused to show her your body, the forged papers, the grief counseling she was forced into. They stole me from you," she whispered. "But I never stopped being your mother. Not for a day. Not for a second." I couldn't hold it in anymore. My voice cracked hard. "I never hated you. I never knew you, but I never hated you." Her tears flowed freely. We talked for hours about her life, my life, the years we lost, the wounds we now had to untangle. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen. Not as someone else's project, not as a child molded into a false destiny, but as myself. When it got late, Daniel stood. "I'll give you 2 more minutes." He stepped outside. My mother squeezed my hands gently. "I don't want to push you," she said softly. "You don't have to choose sides. You don't have to hate them to know me. I'll take anything you're willing to give, even if it's just knowing you're okay." Her love didn't demand, didn't pressure, didn't claim ownership. It simply existed, pure and unforced. "I want to know you. I want to know everything." She smiled. A smile full of pain, hope, and healing all mixed into one. I'd like that more than anything. Before I left, she hugged me again, gentler this time, like she didn't want to break me. Daniel drove me home quietly. My phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from my parents, messages from my mom and dad, increasingly desperate. Apologies, explanations, excuses, fear. The old me might have responded. But tonight belonged to truth. When I walked inside my house, my parents were waiting, eyes red, faces exhausted. Dad tried to stand. We can explain. I lied to you. Mom reached for me. We were scared. You still lied. They fell silent. I exhaled slowly. I'm not cutting you out, but you don't get to control the narrative anymore. You don't get to decide who I am or where I come from or who I belong to. They nodded slowly, broken, humbled. I walked past them, stopped at the stairs. And from now on, I choose my own family, not the one built on lies, not the one trapped in fear. My real family, the one I was stolen from, the one that never stopped looking for me. As I reached my room, my phone buzzed again. A message from my biological mother. Thank you for choosing to know me. I smiled. Small, real, and for the first time in 23 years, I felt whole.